Hi, this is Angela Tabafunda. Student number is 100-622-426, and I'm here to talk about my League of Legends SUperBlog. So basically, to summarize what League of Legends is, it's basically a bunch of what we talked about in class, and yep, but at the same time they also applied different kinds of techniques to optimize their game. So assets like traditional mesh loading stuff that we talked about in class, they do the same stuff basically. So I still talked about it because I feel like it's particularly special. I mean, it's something to talk about in terms of graphics because like essentially that's how you get your 3D stuff in. So the most interesting part that I think for the SUperBlog is the fog of war. So basically they talk about the shadow that hides the areas in the map. So they went around by so originally they have a small texture, which is like a 1 by 28 by 1 by 28 grid. So instead of like doubling the resolution, they upscaled it into a 256 by 256 texture, and then from there on they apply a Gaussian blur in it. And then they also applied anti-aliasing to get rid of the jagged edges on their texture. So here's the progression of what it looks like essentially. So the first picture is a bit detailed, yeah, but the next one is the upscaled version, which is roughly the same. And then the third picture is the blurred texture of the fog of war. So here's what it looks like before upscaling it. It would look something like this. You can see the jagged edges along the side here, but then after upscaling it and blurring it out, it would look something like this, which would have like a smooth gradient on the edges. Yeah, so shadow is standard shadow mapping. So the engineers optimized it a bit. So instead of using a box filter that filters out the edges of their shadows, they used a 5x5 filter and calculated the weights instead. And they also used an RGB shadow field instead of like a standard alpha, I guess. And then outlines, they did Sobel filters to emphasize their animations, because on their perspective, which is an isometric perspective, you can barely see the actions of small stuff, of small minions. So here is a filter is seen without Sobel filtering, and then the scene here on the right shows the filtering here, so you can see more details with the Sobel filtering applied. And then also to outline the enemies that they have, they probably also used bloom as a post-processing effect. So here I talk about how they could possibly do that, and then here's the rough diagram as to how it is gonna be implemented. And then yep, and then particles. So I talk about the basic particle system here, and then I also talk about the important stuff in terms of what a particle, in terms of particles for League of Legends. So I talked about the transparency, which can cause major issues considering they load a lot of textures in there in variety. And then there's also the animated texture, so just passing on the age of each particle into the UV and then calculating it from there on. Then also what they did differently, which kind of optimized the way particle systems are for the game, is using a gray pack texture, which is basically a grayscale texture that allows you to dissect it into RGB components, and then from there on you can apply what color you want using gradient maps. So here is a picture from the actual League of Legends website that actually explains it. Then here's something about the gray pack texture, and then here's something about the gradient maps. So the result for that would look something like this. So you can see some sick particle effects using the gray pack texture along with the gradient maps and the particles. And then then anti-aliasing is also mentioned to smooth out the jagged edges. So they use a fast approximate anti-aliasing algorithm to apply it to their objects. And then here is the color grading part, which applies to the Ranger ultimate ability. So it turns the scene into like reds and stuff. So that's about it in terms of my super blog. Hope you enjoy reading it.